First Samuel chapter 25, verses 10 through 19. Read. Then Nabal answered David's servants and said, "Who is David? And who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants nowadays who break away, each one from his master. Shall I then take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed for my shearers and give it to men who I do not know where they are from?" So David's young men turned on their heels and went back, and they came and told him all these words. Then David said to his men, "Every man gird on his sword." So every man girded on his sword, and David also girded on his sword. And about 400 men went with David, and 200 stayed with the supplies. Now one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, "Look, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, and he reviled them. But the men were very good to us, and we were not hurt, nor did we miss anything as long as we accompanied them. When we were in the fields, they were a wall to us, both by night and day. All the time we were with them, keeping the sheep. Now therefore, know and consider what you will do, for harm is determined against our master and against all his household, for he is such a scoundrel that one cannot speak to him." Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep already dressed, 5 seahs of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and loaded them on the donkey. And she said to her servants, "Go on before me. See, I am coming after you." But she did not tell her husband Nabal. So we see in the previous chapters that David sent young men to speak to Nabal to say how David and his men protected the property, the wealth of Nabal, because he had 3,000 sheep that were in Carmel. And so when David was passing through Carmel to get to the wilderness, then he heard there was a shearing day or a festival or a time, and there was naturally going to be food there. David needed supplies and provision for his men because he was fleeing from Saul. So he went to Nabal and said, "Hey, here I am coming to you as a son. I've protected your stuff." And this is what Nabal answers in verse 10. "Who is David? Like, who are you? Who is the son of Jesse? I don't care who he is. I don't know him. I don't owe him anything." Right? And then it's very interesting what it says here. I don't know this to be true, but it sounds like he knows who David is because he says what David is doing, running away from his quote-unquote master, King Saul. He says, "There are many servants nowadays who break away, each one from his master." So it's almost, I don't know who is David, who is the son of Jesse, but yet he says specifically exactly what David has done and is currently doing to Saul. He's running from Saul. He's broken away from Saul and is now on the run. So, verse 11, very prideful statement in verse 11. And we know that God supplies all things. So the fact that Nabal is a stiff-necked, hard-headed fool, hard-hearted, that does not give any, just in this little thing, doesn't mean that he didn't in the past, but in this example in history, Nabal did not give glory and praise and honor to God the Father, who supplies all things and who grows us in our riches. He says in verse 11, "Shall I then take my bread?" Well, who gives us bread? The children of Israel got bread from heaven when they were in the wilderness. "And my water," where did the children of Israel get water from in the wilderness? They got it from the rock. "And my meat," where did the quail come from in the wilderness? Even Moses asked, the Lord. And the Lord responded, what? I can't supply quail, paraphrasing. When has my arm ever been incapable or been waxed short that I cannot supply all the needs and provision that I have killed for my shearers, even the workers that have been given to Nabal? All of these things have been given by God. And give it to men I do not know where they are from. And he also lies. He's lying because he knows who David is. And he knows whose name David is coming in. Very prideful statement. God supplies bread. He supplies water. He supplies meat. He supplies workers. He supplies all things. And he gives it in accordance to his heart, his will. And he gives it in abundance. Verse 12. So David's young men turned on their heels and went back. And they came and told David all these words. Then David said to his men, every man gird up his sword. And every man did so. And about 400 men. Some men had to stay with the supplies. So the thing back in the day, your wealth nowadays goes into the bank, or it goes into a safe, or that's not how their wealth was held. I'm not saying all of them. There was some wealthy people that there was banks back in those days and, loan sharks, blah, blah, blah. But typically your wealth roamed around a wilderness amongst nomads and other tribes of people. So if my sheep walked onto your land, which you declarated, there wasn't maps, there wasn't things back in those days. So if you said that, hey, these sheep were on my land, and if they're on my land, they're my sheep. And I said, well, no, these are my sheep. See, they're branded. You had a right to fight against me. And if you won, guess what? You took my wealth. You took the sheep as booty, as plunder, right? It was piracy just in the desert, in the wilderness, in these areas. So David went to Nabal, said, hey man, I protected your wealth in the wilderness. All we're asking is for a little bit of supplies. You have an abundance. The only reason why you have this abundance is because God allowed for. See, David's heart is a heart of beloved. David's heart is in the name of Christ. He has a heart after God's own heart. So he does, as a fellow shepherd, he cares for the other shepherds. And in so, there should have been an appreciation to the one who helped keep the wealth to Nabal. Generous hearts is where we should be. And so when David did this, David was offended. Offense came into David. David felt reviled. And we'll read that in the next couple of verses. Verse 14, now one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, look, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, and he reviled them. He reproached them. He basically lied on them, and then there was no appreciation or gratitude. When Jesus entered into the houses of the Pharisees and tax collectors, there was an example in the Gospels where it says, you did not supply to me any water to wash my feet with. That's because they were Nabal. They were a fool, stiff-hearted, or stiff-necked and hard-hearted. They did not have generosity to the guest. David was the one that needed the generosity and was asking for it and was owed it. Should have been just a generosity. Hey, look at all that the Lord has provided, 3,000 sheep. Absolutely. Come, bring your men, feed them, come eat with us, join us, but they didn't. So verse 15, but the men were very good to us. This is what the servants of Nabal are saying to Nabal's wife, Abigail. But the men were very good this is what they testify. They were very good to us, and we were not hurt, nor did we miss anything. So they didn't steal from us, and they actually kept us safe, out of harm's way, as long as they accompanied them. And when we were in the fields, They were a wall to us both by day and night. All the time we were with them keeping the sheep. So David and his men were like a wall, a buffer, a protection, a hedge of protection around Nabal's wealth. Verse 17, now therefore know and consider what you will do. So think about for a second what it is that you're going to do because of what has happened, what has taken place. The fool has reviled a man beloved by God. This man is a mighty warrior. Saul has killed 1,000. David has killed 10,000s, right? Consider what you will do. Today, we need to consider what we're going to do. For harm is determined against our master and against all his household. For he is such a scoundrel that one cannot speak to him. So when the young men of David said to Nabal, hey, ask your young men. Did he ask the young men? No, because he didn't care. He just didn't want to share. So the young men never got a chance to testify. But here they come to Abigail, whose name is my father is joy. And they testified. And she considered, because there was destruction determined for the household. And Abigail made haste. She thought about it. She made haste. And she took provision. The abundance, because of the heart she had. For who? For her house. Because as Nabal's house of her husband is her house. The husband and wife join together as one. They become one flesh. So that is her house. For harm is determined against our master and against his house. Remember that we're not above the master, neither are we above the teacher. So if they hate the master, then they'll hate the students. And so if the master is evil, then what are they going to say about the students? So the master reviled David. So what has David said about the house of Nabal? So she quickly got all these provisions. Verse 19, and she said to her servants, go on before me. See, I am coming after you. But she did not tell her husband Nabal. Okay, so what is the application here in this? So remember that our sin separates us from the love of God. Christ came and spoke to us the good news that we can be reconciled to God the Father through the blood, the death, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We have this testimony in us, and these servants overcame the fool, the evil one, who was harsh and stiff-necked. They overcame him by their testimony. We overcome the enemy through the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. There was blood that was going to be spilt on the account of what Nabal did, how he responded to the servants that were sent to testify what David, the king, had mentioned. What does Jesus Christ mention for us to testify about and to who? And how do we take that into consideration? Because harm is determined for all of those who reject the gospel, all of those who are lukewarm, all of those who say that they know God, but they truly don't serve God with all of their heart, mind, soul, and strength. Have we considered these people? Because see, Nabal was the master and the overseer of the house, but yet his wife, who was a lesser but a co-equal in the sight of Christ, came and made a choice. Where are we making our choices today to make a stand, even if it's in the face of adversity? She was a woman of understanding, of intelligence, of wisdom, of knowledge, probably of the fear of the Lord. And we'll see that in a little bit further chapters, but she had true understanding and she acted on it. So how are you acting on the wisdom and understanding that you have today because of what Christ has done for you? Y'all be blessed.